Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 167. This time on the podcast, Jen interviews Annaliisa Kapp on the topic of how to create mental clarity and focus and reduce brain fog. Sorry, what was I saying?
Hey everyone, welcome to Careers by Jen, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. I'm Jen Swanson, and I'm really grateful that you're here listening today. We've got lots to talk about with my guest, Annaliisa Kapp, and all of the advice that she's going to share with us today. Before we get to that, I'd like you to come on over to careersbyjen.com when you have a minute and check out the online courses under online training. And I wanted to point out that I've got spaces open in my coaching practice. So if you are interested in career coaching, life coaching, coaching to help you get sorted out as to where you want to go and what you want to be doing in your life, take a look at the packages that I've got open there. I've got a few spaces open, so those are there for you to take a look at if you've got time and if you're interested in having somebody walk with you and help you discern for yourself what it is you want to do next and what goals you need to set and where you'd like to be headed in the future. So check that out. That's under coaching at careersbyjen.com. Now I'm going to turn you over to my lovely guest, Annaliisa Kapp. She is a certified holistic nutritionist who has more than 8 years of experience in the health industry. Her mission is to restore you back to your rightful state of health and vitality and make healthy eating more simple and delicious for busy individuals suffering from stress-related fatigue and stomach issues in particular. With this in mind, Annaliisa has created her signature 5-step holistic wellness programs to help you create the healthy lifestyle that you have always wanted. Outside of her successful nutrition practice in beautiful British Columbia, Annaliisa loves spending time with her sweet little girls, Isabella and Annika. She does yoga, she runs, she hikes, she creates amazing, delicious recipes, some of which I've had the fortunate opportunity to taste, and she can impress even the biggest skeptics of healthy eating by the programs and the recipes and the things that she's got going on. So let me turn us over to that conversation with Annaliisa Kapp. So welcome, Annaliisa, to Careers by Jen. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
It's been a while since we've seen each other. We used to be in a women in business group together. That was quite a while ago that I was too busy to continue on, but I was there for a year.
Nice.
And that's when I first met you and heard some of the work that you do. And so I'm wondering if you could share some of that with the listener and tell us what brought you to be doing the work that you do today.
Sure. So it started almost 10 years ago. So I am a holistic nutritionist, and kind of looking back in my childhood, there really wasn't a time where I wasn't interested in food and nutrition. It always just inspired me and really allowed me to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And I started out in the dietitian program in Toronto and then did my yoga teacher training during the summer break, which led me to a whole new perspective on nutrition. So these people were teaching me about, quinoa and tamari sauce and all these things that I had no idea about. And then I ended up going back to Toronto and I was feeling a little bit divided, and I really kind of, followed my heart and enlisted in the Institute of Holistic Nutrition in the fall. And the rest is sort of history. So I had some personal health issues kind of in my early 20s, just from, the stress of school and, my diet not being so healthy as it is now. And I had a lot of, acne, and I was depressed because I wasn't getting the right types of fats and so on. And so that really allowed me to go to the Institute of Holistic Nutrition from a perspective of really wanting to heal myself first. And then once I was able to really understand the power of whole foods and looking at the body as a whole from a perception of just the emotional side of it, the physical side of it, and also just the food part of it, really allowed me to see how you can actually, heal from the inside out. And so that's what led me to be a holistic nutritionist. And now I'm just working with clients who are more sort of dealing with hormonal issues and fatigue and stress-related issues as well.
That's almost everyone.
I think so, yeah. And having gone through that myself too, being a business owner and a mom of, 2 small children, I did actually go through a stage of adrenal fatigue, which really got me out of that whole bubble of, eat a perfect diet and, do yoga every day to actually giving people, real life advice and giving them the actual, resources and tools that they need to really just kind of, create a more resilient and happy body, right? And also kind of, teach their children to do the same, right? So they don't have to grow up and have all these different issues, but also just to teach them about food and what it can do for you.
So today we're talking about how to increase mental clarity and focus and reduce brain fog. And that topic, when we were going back and forth about topics, that topic grabbed my attention because that brain fog thing, oh my goodness, I don't know if it's being 50 or if it's or what it is, but it sure is not fun. Mm-hmm. So what can you do to start with to reduce the fog and to increase the clarity and the focus?
So I think the first step is always just looking at your life and understanding, the whys first. What is the biggest trigger for you, right? And I always believe that you should, start with the basics just to take the stress out of it, right? So, how is your sleep, for example? Are you getting your 8 hours of sleep? And is that the main contributor to your brain fog, right? And then, are you getting enough water? Are you hydrated? Are you drinking water just in the morning and just at night? Or are you getting a sufficient amount throughout the day, right? So, as you become dehydrated, you mentally and physically just lose a lot of energy, right? Because water is used for every single process within the body.
And so that alone will contribute to feeling foggy and not remembering things, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, of course, a big, huge part of it is your diet, right? So the quality of the diet is, most important. So it doesn't matter, what food philosophy you have. I think the most important thing is just the foundation. Is it whole foods? Is it, unprocessed? What's in your food? Really getting to know the ingredients if you are buying packaged foods, which we all do, and asking the right questions, right? So knowing what your food is made of is, the most important thing, and really learning to read the food labels, right? And kind of gaining an education and understanding of, what's taxing your energy mentally, emotionally, and physically. And then there's, of course, food sensitivities as well, right? So when we start to have food sensitivities are a little bit different than, full-blown food allergies, right? So we don't get the anaphylactic kind of response. We get more of what's called sort of like a low-grade inflammation, right? And so it starts, you may see it in your digestion. You may get a lot of bloating, a lot of gassiness. You may get heartburn, or just inconsistent bowel movements kind of day in and day out. So you never know what you're going to get. Or you could have headaches, for example, right? So constantly getting these headaches day in and day out, and you really just can't pinpoint it, right? So maybe it is to do with the foods that you're eating. So noting down and starting to kind of keep a food diary is one of the first things that I do with my clients when I work with them one-on-one is, have a clear picture, not to count calories, but have a clear understanding of where the majority of your nutrition comes from, right? Because sometimes, we think, oh no, I don't eat sugar or I don't eat dairy, but I have butter on my toast and a little bit of milk in my coffee and maybe a little bit of Parmesan on my pasta and so on and so on. So when you start to kind of write these things down and really understand, where your food is coming from, you're going to start to make those connections for yourself.
In a food diary, a question I have, because I've done this before and our kids have done it, because there's a lot of food sensitivities and allergies going on in this house. And one of the questions I have is my understanding of a food diary is writing down every single thing you put in your mouth, but also what symptoms you might have. Is that right? Or is there more to it? Is there anything else you should write in your food diary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have what I use with my clients, I call it a food, mood, and poop diary. So it's important to know, right? Because if you don't know what's happening with your bowel movements, that's kind of like not checking the oil in your car. You know what I mean? You got to know what's going on back there, right? So I get them to write down, from the moment that they wake up, if they're drinking water, right? What they're putting into their coffee, what they're putting onto their bread, what kind of bread are they eating, right? Everything goes onto the food part and then how they're feeling, right? So your mood. Is your energy high? Is your energy low? Do you have brain fog? Do you have anxiety, right? Do you feel depressed today? What's mentally and emotionally happening with you that could be actually triggered by the foods that you're eating, right? And then the poop part, I think, is pretty self-explanatory.
And so for a person who's working and who's noticing some of these symptoms of not having enough focus or clarity or having the brain fog, this sounds like it's tedious. I know for me it's tedious, but I work from home a lot, so it's not as challenging as if you're running out the door, dropping people here and there, commuting, and then having to work for 8, 9, 10 hours, and then repeat the process, and then have to throw food on the table. So for somebody like that, keeping track of every single little thing, are there tools you can use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can. I use a membership kind of software in my practice personally, where they can log in through their iPhones and just jot them down. But you could very easily just, in your notes section in your cell phone, you can keep tabs there, whatever makes it most easier for you. And some people just prefer to write things down physically, so you can keep that piece of paper with you, or you can have a notebook that's just dedicated for that. And other people, they just like to use their cell phone because they are out and about, and then they remember, and then they, pull out their cell phone and they can just, jot it in there.
And what are you looking for in a food diary? Like, do you keep it for a week or a month, or how long do you keep it? And then what are you looking for when you're finished keeping your diary?
So, when you're doing this by yourself, I would say, if there are foods that you're sort of, you kind of have an idea that they're maybe not agreeing with you, that makes it a little bit easier, right? Because you can very easily let's say for 14 days, so the first week, you kind of start to notice, right? You start to notice, how much of that food you're actually having. And then perhaps the next week, try to find alternatives to that food. You know what I mean? And switch it up a little bit and see how all of those aspects change for you. So see how your mood is, see how your mental clarity is, and so on. But I think it's important to kind of just work on one thing at a time so that you have that clarity, right? So for example, if you're someone who gets a lot of cravings, let's say like sugar cravings, carb cravings,
Salt,
right?
Cheesies.
Yeah. Well, all of those things. So take what it is that you're mostly kind of craving and start to work around that, right? Because those give you important clues, right? So for example, if you're craving sugar a lot, so it could be just a sugar addiction, it could be an emotional thing, or it could be a way for you to, get the energy that you're needing because you don't get enough sleep. It could be a reward system, right? Because it releases dopamine. So it's like, a happy reward for you. Or it could be something deeper. So it could be something like a candida overgrowth, right? And so you're not actually kind of, completely in control of those cravings. It's like your body's really wanting it, right? So it's a deeper thing that's happening. And so when you start to, keep note of these things, then you start to figure out these clues, right? Because we're all different. So it's important to kind of understand your own bio individuality, right? And the more that you write things down, it's like a puzzle, right? And so you're putting down those little puzzle pieces, and then you can start to kind of, put them back together and understand your own symptoms, right? Because your body's always speaking to you in symptoms. So when something is out of balance, your body's going to communicate that with you through your symptoms, right? And so the more you know about your symptoms and understand the root cause of them, the better able you are to kind of manipulate your diet and kind of, look for resources that can help to bring your body back into balance.
Are there particular culprits, particular types of food that will lessen your focus, lessen your clarity that we know? Yeah, sugar's the big one.
Sugar is a big culprit, absolutely. So when we kind of again start to look at the underlying causes of why we may get mental fatigue or brain fog. Again, candida is a big clue, right? So sugar addiction. Adrenal fatigue is another one.
What is that?
So adrenal fatigue is just a set of symptoms like perhaps you have either blood pressure that's too high or low. You have fatigue, especially in the morning. Depending on which level of fatigue you're at, so there's different stages of adrenal fatigue. You may get a second wind in the evening, right? So it has to do with your cortisol levels and where they're at. So because of the stressors that are put on us from society, from our home, and from our food system as well as toxins, it can stress us out. And so our stress mechanism is supposed to be used for helping to protect us, right? And so when we're crossing the street, and the car is coming at us or a bike is coming at us, we need that system to be activated so that we can move really quickly and get out of the way, right? But the problem in our society is that because there's so many stressors, the body can't distinguish between the bike that's coming at you or the bear attack versus, you not getting your taxes in on time, or you having food sensitivities that are constantly causing your body stress, right? Or emotional stress, right?
So all of that contributes to it.
Absolutely. And, so I touched a little bit about cortisol, which is one of the main kind of stress hormones, right? And so one of the reasons why we get the mental emotional fatigue is due to a hormonal imbalance, right? So when we have too much cortisol, that can, deplete our serotonin and dopamine, which are happy, joyous hormones that make us feel motivated and excited and inspired and not depressed, right? And so when we had too much cortisol, all those happy hormones, they're not there, and perhaps even your melatonin has depleted because they're antagonistic, and so you can't sleep, for example, right? So stress is a huge factor, and adrenal fatigue is just kind of a term that's thrown around a lot. Some people say it's, there's really no adrenal fatigue, but whatever we want to call it, it's stress. It's too much stress on the body, and the body can't cope with it.
And
right?
sugar doesn't help with that.
No. So sugar really affects your blood sugar levels and your inflammation in the body. And both of those factors can cause fatigue and just not make you feel like you can focus, right?
So that's one of them. Are there a couple more that are common things that will cause these problems?
Yes. So I touched upon just food sensitivities, dehydration, lack of sleep. As far as kind of nutrient deficiencies, I would say perhaps, omega-3s are the biggest factor, right? So your brain is made up of fats, and so we want to get the right types of fats in, the ones that are, anti-inflammatory, so that your brain neurons can, communicate with each other with ease, right? So there's no inflammation. So omega-3s come from things like nuts, for example. Walnuts are a really great source. Fish, obviously, you want to look for more cold water fish like wild salmon and sardines and mackerel. As well as some other plant sources would be chia seeds and flax seeds as well, right? But the best sources are the fish and fish oils, right? And so again, when we're getting too many of the omega-6s, which is what most of us are getting, then we start to get more and more inflammation in the body. And one of the root causes of things like, depression and the inability to focus is just omega-3 deficiency, so your healthy fats. So that's really, really important.
So it's food that can heal us.
Yes.
So if you're a busy working person who's used to grabbing a can of spaghetti sauce and a package of noodles to throw on the table, not speaking from any experience or anything. Well, now we can't because we have so many sensitivities and we do a lot of cooking from scratch in this house. But I remember in the past when we didn't know we had these sensitivities, it was, you come home from a long day and it's 5:30 and everybody's hungry. It's really easy to take a pizza out of the freezer and throw it in the oven and eat who knows what. And so what do you tell the working person to try and shift some of these what feels like necessary evils of throwing packaged food on the table? How do you help somebody with that?
Well, I think the first step always is just your mindset, right? So what you need to do first is make a decision that this is important to you. There's just no way around it. Food affects how you function and food affects how you feel and your health, right? And so if you don't plan ahead, if you don't kind of have a couple of things that you can prepare really easily at home, then you're just creating more stress on the body and emotionally as well, because you feel overwhelmed and you feel, a little bit depressed, right? Because you're like, oh, I know I should be eating healthy, but I just can't do it, right? So the first step is just to kind of have the mindset of like, I can do this. I just need to make it a priority, and I need to maybe just prepare, one or two things that I can just grab and go for myself. And the way that I work with people is that I literally take it one meal at a time, right? So first of all, let's work on your breakfast. Let's, decide on 3 things that you're going to make that you can either take with you or you can have prepared ahead, right? So for an example, everyone can make a smoothie. And if you have busy mornings where you have to drop your kids off, you're rushing off to work, whatever it is that your schedule is like, perhaps just on Sundays, you take, 5 Ziploc bags and you prepare your smoothies ahead, right? So you put your greens in there, you put a dose of omega-3s in there from a tablespoon of flaxseed or chia seeds. You put a scoop of protein in there, right? Whatever it is that you're, wanting to have most, either plant-based or, a whey protein, or just some hemp seeds. And then some antioxidant-rich fruits and veggies, right? I think I mentioned greens. So all of those components together, they're going to give you steady blood sugar. They're going to give you a really great dose of nutrients, and they're just going to start your day off giving you that mental clarity and energy because you're not stressing, you're not spiking your blood sugar, and you're just, first of all, just the action of, accomplishing something so early in the morning increases your dopamine. So, that in itself increases your focus, which is awesome, right?
So just making your smoothie is a reward.
Exactly.
Oh, well, I do that every day.
There
Check.
you go. Exactly. And then you just make up those little bags, you keep them in the freezer, and then in the morning you just pull one bag out, put in your liquid, put it into your blender, and you're good to go, right? And then the next one that I do usually is just the dinner part, right? Because that's kind of, the big problem for most people, right? So what you want to do is just maybe, have a look at your schedule and see where you have those days where you absolutely just, there's no way that you can make dinner, right? So for those days, what you can do is, a crock pot, or what are they called? Slow cooker.
Slow cooker, yeah. Crock pot, yeah.
Yeah. So a slow cooker meal, right? So throw some protein in there, throw some veggies in there, some stock, and turn it on, and you're good to go. And again, it's one of those things, once you get home and it's ready for you, the stress goes down, the focus goes up, and you just feel so much better. And then for the next day's lunch, you can take the leftovers, right? Or you can eat that meal, twice a week, right? So whatever you make, I always encourage people to make a big batch of it. So whether you just prepare your breakfasts, it takes you pretty much the same amount of time to make one breakfast smoothie than it does 5, right? Maybe an extra 5 minutes, right? So again, planning is the first step, then actually doing one thing, if that's all you can do through, for your first week. And then the next week, think about what you're going to have for dinners, right? And, jot down a couple of easy things that you can make, and then just go from there. Right?
Meal planning then.
Meal planning is definitely the key. So it's like that with, if you look at anything in life, finances, for example, if you're not planning ahead, you kind of end up screwing yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with food. If you don't have a couple of, either really simple things to make. So another example would be what I really encourage people to do is kind of like one pan meals, right? So
they're very popular right now. Sheet pans,
Yeah.
they call them.
Yeah.
Sheet pans, yeah.
So what I do to make it even a little bit easier is I always put like an unbleached parchment paper on my pan, right? And then I rotate. So sometimes I have, some organic chicken sausages. Other days I'll have maybe like a wild salmon and I'll just pour like salsa on it, right? And then 1 or 2 vegetables that you can cook at the same time, right? So for fish, because it's so quick to cook, it only takes about 20-25 minutes. You want to use things like bell peppers, for example, because they cook at the same time, and maybe even some cherry tomatoes you can pop in there too, right? And you're done, right? So, again, going back to the mindset, like you got to lose the mindset of this is hard. It takes time, because it really doesn't. It takes you just as much time to, boil a pasta that's full of wheat and, pro-inflammatory versus, cooking up some quinoa or cooking up some lentil noodles, for example, right? That are full of fiber and nutrients, right? So it's just about, making small adjustments and not trying to make over your diet all at once, right? Because that never works. When you put too much on your plate, then you just kind of set yourself up for failure.
I know that some people find it hard to even know how to begin, and I've come to the realization that a lot of people don't know how to cook, and I find that really sad. I don't know. It's not that difficult. Like you said, it's not hard, and with the amazing internet, you can find videos and lessons and almost every few days we're looking up how to make something new. And part of our challenge is that we have to cook vegan because we have so many, and gluten-free and nut-free for me, but it's the dairy issues, and the kids can't have eggs, and there's just a lot going on. So we're looking up recipes all the time. But it's easy now because of the internet.
Yeah, again, it comes back to kind of just making it your priority and planning ahead a little bit, right? So actually, taking out your phone and, if you're driving, don't do that. But, jotting down and putting it into your calendar as a reminder, hey, I should, put aside 10, 15 minutes and, write down or look at my schedule and see what I need to do this week to make it a little bit easier for myself, right?
Right. And it, I think that is a key point, is making it a priority and figuring out how to do that. And, that's good advice. How long does it take for a person to notice a difference once they start paying attention to the food that goes in for things like focus and clarity and brain fog? How long would it take a body to start to heal itself or to start to feel better?
It really depends. So if it's a deeper rooted issue, right? So let's say it's candida. Let's say it's, toxins like heavy metals can sometimes cause that, foggy brain and that sort of thing. And then it's going to take a little bit longer, right? So, a few months at least until you're, kind of feeling a bit more balanced. If it's a little bit more simpler than that, like you just kind of need to clean up your diet a little bit, you need to, find some healthier alternatives to sugars, for example, you can start to really notice a difference between a week or two. So it actually doesn't take a long time. If there's a healing process happening, it's obviously going to take a little bit longer. And, there's different things that you can take to kind of help the brain to actually heal and to function better. So I mentioned the omega-3 fatty acids, for example. Those are great for that. If stress is a big factor, using, herbs, for example, like holy basil, which is great for, stress management and kind of helping you calm down a bit. There's also medicinal mushrooms, which are amazing. So you're going to hear a lot more of that, within the next couple of years. But they have a great adaptogenic quality, right? And so if stress is that, concern for you, then that's where you can kind of start, right?
Is that like red reishi or whatever? How do you say that?
Yeah. So cordyceps are great for stress. There's lots of different ones. For memory in particular, there's lion's mane. So that's the type of medicinal mushrooms. So you can buy them, in capsules, or you can buy them in a powdered form. Of course, there's going to be different quality forms of these types of supplements. So you have to make sure that it's a, good quality company. Do a little bit of research behind that. A great one here in Canada is they're called Harmonic Arts. I really love their products. They make lots of different herbal tinctures for stress, but also lots of different formulations for medicinal mushrooms as well. Really beautiful products.
Wow, there's so much to learn.
Yeah. And then lately what I've been using, and this works well for kids too, is just sunflower lecithin as well. So it's got a lot of choline in it, which is great for the brain development as well, but works great for adults as well, right? And really good for the liver support as well, just to get those toxins out too.
There's so much information out there, and sometimes it's a little bit confusing. So I imagine that's why it's helpful to have somebody like you guide you through what's helpful and what's not helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I think when we as practitioners really take the time to educate, our clients and our patients about, why you're feeling this way and how your body functions and how you can use, food as medicine, not so much use food as, calories in, calories out, and kind of, looking at I don't want to name any names, but, 100 calorie chocolate bar or granola bar, that's not going to do anything for you. You know what I mean? If you want your body to function well and want to have the mental clarity and energy, then you're going to have to feed your body those types of foods that are in nature, have that type of quality, right?
It's a challenge. And for us, it's a whole learning curve because we're also trying to reduce plastic in our house and reduce waste. So we don't buy granola bars, but we've been making, and actually it was our 18-year-old who started making them. She's very health conscious. She started making protein energy balls, she calls them. And they look like granola. They've got oatmeal and hemp and all sorts of things in them. I think cranberry and tahini, or we can't use peanut butter, so pea butter or something like that to hold it all together. And they're raw and they're delicious. And they're just, you eat 2 of those and it's more filling than a granola bar, actually.
Course.
And there's no sugar.
Yeah,
there's natural
absolutely.
sugar, I suppose, in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
is that
which
something
is
to
different.
avoid as well, or is that okay? Like fruit has a lot of natural sugar in it, doesn't it?
Again, you want to find a good balance between the two. If you do have a lot of, sugar highs and lows where you do get a lot of cravings for sugars, then I would recommend just, reducing the amount of fruits that you're eating throughout the day and choosing more, lower glycemic fruits. So these are the dark berries, right? But I think I'm a big kind of believer, again, in the quality and quantity rather than anything else, because if you deprive yourself, let's say you go on this big sugar thing and you're like, I'm not eating any sugar, and your brain actually needs carbohydrates and, for your body to produce or to release dopamine, you need, high quality carbohydrates, right? So these are like your sweet potatoes and your dates and so on, right? I feel like when you deprive yourself of too much, then you go on these binges and you start that cycle of up and down. Whereas, if you find similar tasting foods that are a little bit healthier, they have more nutrients and minerals, then you just feel more satisfied and more at peace with yourself, and you're able to sustain this way of living, right? So, if you're using white sugar, for example, test out coconut sugar. It's very similar, a little bit lower in the glycemic. It's going to give you lots of minerals, right? Which help to actually digest that food, right? So rather than robbing your body of energy, it's going to help your body produce more energy. If you're someone who has a lot of cravings, then, having something like stevia or monk fruit, which is another it doesn't affect your blood sugar at all type of sweetener. You can, switch to that instead and see how your body feels on that. But, finding healthier alternatives is always better, right? But, to be honest, to go into like a really, really low carbohydrate, like 0 sugar diet, I find people that do that, they're just not happy. And part of life is, to be happy and to enjoy things. And so finding a good balance with that, I think, is really important too. And when you go on special diets, so let's say, a Candida diet, which is, very, very low because, you're trying to balance out a certain, a body system, right? And so it's kind of like putting your leg into a cast, right? So you're going to wear the cast for a while, but then you're going to take the cast off and wear crutches for a little while, right? And then you're going to get off the crutches and kind of, have a nice normal life again, right? And so it's the same with these special kinds of diets, right? And so when we're trying to fix something or kind of bring the body back into balance, yes, we may use a certain type of, therapeutic therapeutic diet for a couple of months. But then, how do you transition out of that? It's not something that you should be on forever. It's a diet that's supposed to balance it out and fix the problem. And then, you learn and you understand what your body likes and doesn't like, right? And what your kind of genetic weaknesses are. And then you find healthier alternatives. And then, you have a croissant when you just are in a French bakery and it's there, and then you can have it and not feel guilty about it. You can just enjoy it without having to think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me, So it's about finding that balance, right?
That's great. So what's a last piece of advice you have for the listener?
I think the mindset piece is a really big part of it, right? So, make a decision that your health is a priority, because it is a form of self-love and self-care. And, just allow yourself to do one thing at a time. So for the next week, just focus on your breakfast. Do that and you'll feel really, really good about that. You'll actually get more energy and so on from that, rather than, trying to do everything at once. I think kind of taking those baby steps and having that positive mindset is the most important thing.
Thanks, Annaliisa. Where can people find out more about you?
Sure. So I am on the web, the World Wide Web. So you can find my website at annaliisakapp.com. My name is spelled with 2 I's because I'm Estonian. And I write a health blog, so there's lots of health articles on there, as well as recipes. And I also run a 5-day free sugar freedom challenge, right? So teaching you a little bit of what I talked about today about the importance of finding healthier alternatives, how to do that. And it also comes with a 5-day meal plan as well, just to get you started with that.
And people can find that. Can you spell your website just so that people hear it?
Sure. It's ANNALIISAKAPP.com.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.
Oh, good. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Careers by Jen podcast. If you're interested in our private Facebook group, you can search in Facebook, the Careers by Jen community, and you can join. I think there's close to 60 of us in there now. You can join us over there in our Facebook group, and we don't do tons of stuff in there, but every once in a while I'll post some things and we'll connect and talk about career issues and life issues and other things. So if you're interested in that, come on over and find us. And until next time, this is Jen Swanson. Go make yourself a really healthy snack and take good care.